Now, my name is Kenneth Lukwagandason, your host. Today we'll be looking at labor laws and rights under the context of decent work in Uganda. Now, Uganda has many laws in place to protect workers. Their rights, but despite all this, we still hear about violations from different parts of the country. Now, the country has a labor dispute resolution mechanism to the level of an industrial court, but some of these avenues are not fully utilized. Now, as the country gets more investors, we also hear about violations in factories, places, and other places, including mines, which continue to be documented. Some of the cases have been raised in Parliament, but also by other labor unions in Parliament. Workers' representatives have talked about these issues. There are also emerging threats against refugees who are protected under international law to seek employment, provided the host country or communities do not discriminate against them. Now, analysis done by the National Organization of Trade Unions, NOTO, suggests that there's urgent need to have a multi-sectoral intervention in these issues. So tonight we'll focus on the issues that NOTO has come across as part of scaling up advocacy for workers' rights, but also promotion of decent work in our country. I have three guests in studio. Mr. Richard Bigirwa, Secretary General, National Organization of Trade Unions, NOTO. He's also the General Secretary, Uganda Breweries, Bakers, Millers, and Allied Workers Union. He also represents workers on the board of the National Social Security Fund. Well, thank you very much for joining us. If you can correct me if there is anything I've not said right in the introduction.
Thank you so much. Once again, my name is Richard Bigirwa, the Secretary General of the National Organization of Trade Union. I want to take this opportunity to thank you, Mr. Lukwago, for hosting us at Radio 1 today. All right. For us to be able to discuss these important topics. All right. Thank you very much,
Mr. Bigirwa. Let me also introduce Mr. Juma Mwamula. He's the General Secretary, Uganda Private Teachers Union. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, my brother. A very good evening to you. A very good evening to our listeners out there.
Also in studio, Mr. Nicholas Businje is a Programs Officer at NOTO. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Businje.
Thank you so much, my very good friend, Kenneth Anderson Lukwago, our very good moderator, and it's always a pleasure to share with our very good workers outside there.
All right, I'll begin with you, Mr. Bigirwa, as Secretary General of NOTO. Just a brief background about NOTO, who you are, before we actually go deep into the analysis that you've done about the rights of workers, the laws, and the protection they can enjoy under the context of decent work in Uganda.
First of all, thank you, Kenneth. As earlier highlighted, I'm the Secretary General of NOTO and the CEO of the organization. And NOTO is a national labor center with 37 affiliates. That means we are the umbrella organization which takes charge of the workers in this country. I want to take this opportunity also to stand with the people of Kitezi who lost their lives. All this is related to occupational health hazards, because I believe that the KCCA would have taken more constructive, serious cautions before this happened. And therefore I want to stand with the relatives who have lost their dear ones in this scenario, which is a bit unfortunate.
All right.
And time and again we have told the KCCA to be very mindful of the rights of the workers, even here in the city. And you can see this is a symptom of something else, because that heap to reach that level and collapse, it is now signaling there's a lot inside there. Thank you.
All right. And I'll start with you briefly. You've begun with that point of the KCCA situation with the Kitezi landfill accident, where we have lost over 35 people. Maybe give us an overall view about workers' rights in Uganda. How are we doing as a country when you look at that issue in relation to what you've just said?
First of all, it is very clear that some time back we had a few investors in this country. And the government clearly stated to us that we give investors time to come in and settle down, which we have done. But in the last Labour Day meeting, we put all these grievances to His Excellency about the deteriorating workers' rights in the country. And the good news is that the President directed the Ministry of Labour to ensure that this situation should change. And I'm happy that we have moved through many industrial parks, trying to encourage the investors to ensure that they follow strictly the rules and the games of decent work into this country. And I'm very optimistic that the situation is going to change, especially the issue of consolidation. The President was very specific that investors should get serious and ensure that the issue of consolidation should be reduced. And we are working on that. But some investors are still very adamant to listening to us. But we believe that we are going to work together. This is a government whereby everybody should abide by the laws of the country. And we are going to ensure that we push harder using the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development to that effect.
Right. When you talk about casualization, what are you implying? What is it?
Casualization,
and how problematic is it? How is it?
This is precarious work. People are just working, no contracts, unregulated hours of work. There's no standards, not observing occupational health and safety issues, many other issues, no remittance of NSSF to the fund. So social protection is not covered. So we believe that this mode of work is not only good for the workers, but for the government, because we believe government is losing a lot of revenue because many people are not paying taxes. People are not covered by Social Security. And this is a matter of concern for us as a trade union in this country. And
have you tried to reach out maybe in some of these places where some of the affected Ugandans you're talking about are working, to be able to understand the context under which, one, they got employed, what they are being paid, and whether their rights are being observed? Have you tried? Have you been able to reach out?
Yes, through our affiliates, we have done all it takes. Even last week, we were in the areas of Matuga sensitizing workers about their rights and also the employers and letting them know that they should follow this. And we are doing a follow-up meetings to ensure that this is observed. And we are realizing many numbers are coming up, especially if you see people who are registering for the NSSF and the rate of accidents. And we are trying our best to ensure that we continue monitoring. But this can only be done by a serious inspectorate of labor. We want to request the Ministry of Labor to pull up the inspection. They should do a lot of inspection in all the workplaces to ensure that they keep these employers at tentacles and they ensure that these employers observe the law.
All right. Let me come to you, gentlemen. You've heard from Mr. Bigirwa here emphasizing the issues, the challenges that are there. One would say that maybe these challenges are actually happening because we do not have the laws in place that are supposed to protect workers. In your analysis, do we have adequate laws? And if we do, what could be the issue? Why are we continuing to see these violations?
Thank you so much, our very good moderator. As Secretary General did mention, as a national center, we are doing a number of things in partnership with very many stakeholders. The law provides for tripartism, that we should work with the government, particularly the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. We should work with the Federation of Uganda Employers. Then we are also working with international partners. And we are very, very grateful that we are undertaking a very good project with ILO, which is a UN specialized agency on workers' issues in the country. And if you could permit me, Kekines, we are privileged that we are one of the partners trying to ensure that other refugees and the forcibly displaced persons. As we have said, a lot of investors are coming in Uganda, but we are also seeing that Uganda is one of the best countries with open refugee policy in Africa and in the world. Number of refugees, right now we have 1.5 million refugees in the country in different settlement camps.
And more continue coming
and
in.
more are trying to continue to come. And this is because of enabling legal frameworks. The Constitution does provide for that. You look at Refugees Act of 2006, provides for refugees' rights and privileges. We look at Uganda is also a party to the 1951 Refugees Convention as well as the 1969 OAU Refugee Convention, meaning that these enabling frameworks entice those people who are in need, because we are all potential of refugee status. Nobody has ever wished to be a refugee or forced in another country. But now in Kampala, for instance, why are we talking about refugees in Kampala? Go around Kabalagala, Kansanga. There are a number of what we call now urban refugees or urban migrants who also are now part of us, and host communities have number of issues with them. And that's what we're saying. As we are living with these refugees in these areas, we must live together with them, because they come with number of skills, they come with their talents, they come with their credentials. They also pay taxes. We also get revenue from them. So that's why we are saying, as a labor center who addresses rights of every human being, wherever it is, that let's live together to ensure sustainable development where everyone is not left.
Have you seen any challenges where maybe refugees are not being allowed to work? Or what are the issues you have there?
Yes, we have, under this project we are doing with ILO, we have refugees. First of all, we thank government because of its open policy. But our interaction, because we are doing number of outreaches, what we are calling capacity building through awareness raising workshops where we engage with them, talk with them. They are telling us, one, some of them don't have permits, others don't have refugee identity cards. Some of them, they are denied opportunities to engage in business. They are denied opportunities to work when they have qualification, because they came from, for instance, Congo with different qualification standards. So here they must be standardized so that they can be given jobs. Secondly, some of them are also ignorant about trade unions. That's why, and yet the Constitution provides for the right for what? For association, freedom to associate. The laws provide for collective bargaining. They can come together through the trade unions and seek for bargains and negotiate on what they deserve. These days, Kenneth, I always tell my fellow workers, these days you get what you bargain for, not what you deserve. You know how investors these days. If a job is, for instance, for 10 million and you don't bargain for 10 million, they will give you only 1 million. They will not say, Lukwago is working very well. Let's give him a salary rise. So that's why we're saying we're coming to empower these communities on some of these laws and rights. And my senior brother will share some of these rights.
As you advocate for the rights of refugees to actually get employment, you also equally understand that there's an unemployment situation in our country. Jobs are not enough. So you have very many Ugandans who have graduated. They are moving around with their credentials, but they are not getting jobs. So if you have someone will say foreigners coming here, and you're advocating for them to actually get decent jobs here, someone will not understand you. What would you tell a Ugandan who thinks maybe what you're promoting is not really right?
That's correct. That's true. And there has been a very big public outcry in terms of that the government is over-empowering or pampering migrant workers or refugees at the expense of what?
Ordinary Ugandans.
Yes, ordinary Ugandans and the citizen. Even now you heard the other time I was watching on TV, people of Kabalagala, that these people come with a lot of money,
Even Kasita, it's one of the issues they raised when they were on strike.
Absolutely. So that's what I'm saying now. What the international policy is that let's move out of dependence by the refugees. They shouldn't over depend on handouts. Let us now build their capacities, build their employment opportunities. That's what even decent work calls for, employment creation for everybody. So that if everybody is given opportunity to work, meaning productivity will raise. These refugees will create more jobs, which will help ordinary Ugandans. They will pay revenue, they will pay taxes, which will be used by government of Uganda to develop infrastructure, which will be used by everybody. I can tell you, government of Uganda gets support from international development partners to ensure that refugees also live better and decent standards in the host countries and host communities. So it is a balance. It is a tricky situation. Yes, unemployment crisis is there, but that's why we are saying let's also empower these refugees so that they can develop themselves and generate more opportunities so that everybody can benefit.
You want to come in, Mr. Bigirwa? Would you agree? We have an employment situation, even before we hear from Juma. How do we strike a balance? Okay. Your colleague here seems to suggest that even refugees should be accorded the same treatment like ordinary Ugandans. Somebody will say, look, our people are suffering with no jobs. What do we do? How do we strike a balance? How do we create jobs so that the refugees are happy and also Ugandans are happy?
Thank you, Kenneth.
Not only jobs, decent jobs.
Thank you, Kenneth. In the modern world today, we are moving towards what we call many forms of new jobs. We have online jobs, platform jobs, the gig economy. All these are new opportunities which are being created in this country for everybody to work. And my concern or my encouragement to all the people in this country is that let us embrace all forms of employment. For instance, the platform workers now are very many into this country. And this is a new opportunity which is coming up across the country and across the globe. Many people are working using the online. And these are opportunities we are saying, these are some of the opportunities the refugees can grab. And we believe it works. You will find now there are a lot of Ubers working, there are a lot of work. Somebody seated in Germany is employing a Ugandan here online. We know it has its challenges like time zones and regulated working hours, because sometimes these guys work on task basis, and you find that the hours of work are quite many, more than the 8 hours we recommend. So these are challenging situations we must face. But by and large, I don't agree that we are running out of jobs. The issue is creativity. We must create more, we must find more avenues, create more opportunities for ourselves. For instance, now when you look around, the gig economy alone is employing quite a big number of workers into this country. And this is all about modernization in the world. And we should ensure that we do this. Those days, you remember, in those old days, whereby if somebody wants a message, you write a letter. The way of doing businesses is changing. And therefore, I want to encourage Ugandans that we embrace the new theories of change, the new ways, the new opportunities of new employment, and we adapt to the changing world, especially the artificial intelligence, which is very important for this country.
All right, let's hear from Juma as a teachers' union. You have anything to say about this discussion that we have about decent work, rights of workers, etc.? Teachers have been some of those people who have been complaining in this country. We remember they have had strikes. and even private teachers have also been part of making some particular demands. But let's hear from you about this discussion we are having, workers' rights in Uganda and the protection they're enjoying.
First of all, it is true when you say teachers have been one of those who are on unending cries in relation to their working situations. That is very true, especially in the private sector where I come from. What we commonly see are issues of casualization, like my Secretary General at one moment indicated. We're seeing engagements without contracts. We are seeing very miserable payments that are either delayed or sometimes defaulted, and a lot of inhuman harassments. That is very true. At one time, you asked as to whether we have the law, and indeed, my brother here, Nicholas, well elaborated it. We have laws right from the international statutes, right, ILO conventions, and several others. Here locally, our national constitution is so explicit about rights of workers from Article 29, Article 40. We even have full acts that are dedicated to people who are providing services in Uganda, like the Employment Act, the Labor Dispute Arbitration Act, and several others. They are all there to make sure that the cries of workers are answered. But now, where is the problem? Even when that is happening, why do we continue to see the same thing? First of all, the principle of owner of capital has been maximization of profits. And how do you maximize profits? Through minimizing costs. You minimize costs and make sure that you really have enough gain from the output of the cost. So, to the factory owners, to school owners, and owners of capital, they have looked at employers' labor as the cheapest avenue to manipulate, especially some of those employers who are really a little bit unrealistic.
Maybe the economy
they have targeted labor
the economy cannot support
as the cheapest.
The good,
and even when the laws exist, my Secretary General here just said that there has been indeed and there is an ongoing visit in factory parks. That is true. But for as long as it is a one-off, then the hope is not as strong as when it is a well-structured setup. Because somebody will make preparations and make sure that when the minister comes into the factory setup, things seem to be okay. So for us as trade unionists, the message has been where we have reached, establish unions, which are strong unions. Workers out there need to understand what are unions, that they are workers-own organizations that are established at a workplace to make sure that issues that relate to their work is handled when their voices, when their interests at the forefront. So we wish that in every work setup, trade unions can be there. Trade unions can be, members can enroll into a trade union such that they use their voices, they use their numbers as already provided for in the laws to do collective bargaining, as already provided in the laws to do the defense against all these harassments, against all these infringements that relate to work. But without workers' own action, the question of crying about deprivations, the element of crying about these ill treatments is likely to continue. Because the worker himself must be the first agent of his own preparation for his own rights. Yes.
All right. Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. We need to go for break now. When we return, we'll continue digging deeper, chipping off from where Juma has left us, looking at the numerous laws that we have in place. Why are they not being implemented? But also, we'll also hear more from Mr. Nicholas Musinje on the issue of how we can ensure decent work and accommodate and decent work and employment for people who are coming in here in our country. Looking at how Ugandans are also being treated in other countries where they actually go to work. When you look at the issues we've been hearing about externalization of labor. Now, stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90, but keep your comments coming by the WhatsApp line 0703 090 090. Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Live on Radio 1 FM 90. Today we are looking at labor laws and rights under the context of decent work in Uganda. My guest this evening, Mr. Richard Bigirwa, is Secretary General, National Organization of Trade Unions. NOTU is also General Secretary, Uganda Breweries, Bakers, Millers, and Allied Workers Union. Also in studio, Mr. Juma Mwamula, General Secretary, Uganda Private Teachers Union, and Mr. Nicholas Buchinje, Programs Officer at NOTU. Generally, the discussion is about the rights of workers in Uganda, but we're also looking at the rights of refugees as they come here to settle in our country. Should they be given equal treatment the way Ugandans are treated when it comes to issues of decent work, in light of the fact that we have a problem of unemployment in our country. Now, Mr. Bigirwa, before we went for the break, Mr. Juma talked to us about a number of laws that we have in place, but he seems to be saying that the problem is on the side of implementation. What could be the problem? How do we make the situation better to see that actually these laws are in place to protect Ugandans against the vices, the challenges that you raised as you submitted?
Okay, thank you, Kenneth. First of all, time and again, as trade unions, we have advocated for a few issues which could lead to reforms, but I think we have not been understood till now. First of all, we have advocated for the independent Ministry of Labor, which specifically looks at the issues of labor.
What's the problem there?
So that it is focused. The current arrangement of the ministry, which is mixed up, the attention has not been given.
People are demanding for the ministries actually to be cut down, and you're saying we should have an independent ministry?
The workers' productivity is key. It is an engine. It will even produce more revenues to this country than trying to cut down the ministries. But what I'm saying that we need an independent Ministry of Labor, which will focus its roles specifically on the workers' rights. Number two, the inspectorate. That is the same thing like, that is why I'm advocating for independent Ministry of Labor. We need enough labor inspectors to keep on the ground to ensure that the implementation of the laws are properly followed and done. Then the other thing that the employers, when they come in the country, especially the investors, they should be cautioned that this country is run under the certain standards. But what is happening now, when these investors come, what we start telling them, right from investment authority, there is cheap labor in the country, there is what, that is what we are telling them. And this is not encouraging for us. At the end of the day, the workers of this country are suffering. At the end of the day, government is losing revenue. At the end of the day, there is no social protection for the workers of this country. At the end of the day, the standard of living in the country is not increasing at a rate we expected. And therefore, I would encourage government that for us to strengthen this, let us focus our eyes on labor, being an engine to this economy.
All right, maybe I'll ask you on the issue of what some people will call lack of a decent pay. When you hear from trade unionists, when you hear from labor experts, they talk about the issue of minimum wage as one of the challenges we have. But the president has been saying that, look, we don't need a minimum wage here because it's likely to scare away the investors. They are likely to go away if you start talking about issues of minimum wage, etc. Where is your position on this issue of minimum wage? The other day it was passed by Parliament, only for the president to decline to assent to it.
Our position on the minimum wage is Uganda needs minimum wage, and Uganda is not a special country. All neighbors have minimum wage, and their economies have not collapsed. Secondly, is that we as trade unions, we believe that we should have a yardstick on where the lowest person should start from. I know the president may not be in for it, but we are trying our best to discuss and ensure that this comes to pass. We are scheduled to have a meeting with him, as he promised on the Labor Day, and we believe we should carry this discussion forward. It is a matter of negotiations. For us as trade unions, the standard we use is called negotiations and collective bargaining. And we believe that we should be able to explain further to all the concerns the importance of minimum wage. Imagine somebody paying 3,000, 4,000 for somebody working in a factory. That is 90,000 a month. And somebody is renting, he pays transport, has a family, and these are the rates people are paying. 3,000 a day, 4,000. What can you do with that? So there's need to put a set standard right away to ensure that workers are protected. That's my stand, and I believe we shall continue demanding for minimum wage, and we shall continue to talk to the authorities, those who matter, to ensure that they get to understand us.
All right. Mr. Businje, following up on our discussion on the issue of refugees, so you, as your advocate for the rights of the refugees to get employed here, to get work, etc., any particular recommendation that you would want to give in that particular regard?
Thank you so much. I wanted to add my voice to what my Secretary General has mentioned.
Okay.
In terms of why do we say people must observe labor rights, labor laws, and labor standards? Because if a worker is well catered for, definitely his productivity will what? Increase. If you don't, for instance, provide decent wage to your worker, how do you expect you as an investor or employer to get more productivity? No way. It's like milking a cow without what? Feeding. The cow will definitely what? Fall sick and die. So that's why we are saying decent work is very important. Why? Because one, it equates more jobs. People will get more money, invest in the country, more jobs, more revenue. So the government should not be scared. Two, it will also ensure dialogue. In the context of decent work, if people observe labor rights, labor standards, they talk. You won't find a boss backing at employee or a worker. No way. Even if there is an issue, they will sit down because you become family members. And that's why I've seen where maids are treated well. They are called the aunties and what? And the uncles and so forth. But where a maid is mistreated, you have seen the results. They have burnt kids. They have revenge in a bad way because they are also human beings. Decent work also talks about social protection. Time will come, Kenneth, I'm telling you, you will grow old and you will not have the vigor and the energy. And that's why we say, and that's why government has been very brave, very relevant on this. They have also created NSF amendment where there's voluntary registration and contribution. Let's save for risks, for vulnerabilities, for old age, for sickness, other than saying, oh, musondere. How? If it starts with what? With you and it ends with you. That's what decent work is calling. Time will come when you won't speak. You won't walk through the ladders, through coming to this fourth floor. You will grow old, and when you grow old, that's nature. But you'll have mouth to what?
To feed.
To feed. So how do you plan? Who will you say that you will begin blaming your kids? Abana bange bakozechi banduseko. How? Even them, they have their own hustle. So that's why social protection is very, very important.
All right.
Then it also talks about rights, which is very, very key. And Uganda, we have very many labor laws and rights. One, right to regular and timely and equal pay for equal value. It is a standard practice. In the Constitution, look at Article 6. Regular, timely, and equal pay for equal value. If we are all maids, don't discriminate against us. Right to compensation, overtime, work night hours, holidays, rest days, annual leave, right to employment securities of written contract, probation, notice of period, severance pay, right to family responsibility, paternity leave. I know, Kenneth, of course, you get your paternity leave here. Flexible work. If your wife is pregnant, you are supposed to be given some leave to go and look after your wife. Women have right to maternity.
All those are aspects of decent work.
Decent work, right to occupational safety and health, employment cares when you training, where is exit in case of fire outbreak. For instance, in Ictez, if there was warnings, because KCC were dumping their waste, but if there were clear warnings and monitoring, that's what we're calling OSH, those risks and accidents would have been detected. That's what OSH is all about. There are workers who were collecting bottles there, go and recycle. That's
whose workers?
They are self-employed informal workers.
Okay.
And for us as Labour Centre, we ensure that workers are within formal and informal are catered for, because all do contribute towards development. In fact, they contribute more. We have right to have talked about social security. Suppose investor employer should pay for NSF of workers. Even you yourself, if you are a market vendor, contribute. Go to circles, go to need leaders, go to voluntary NSF schemes. Then we have right of minors and youths. Child labor is a serious case which we are trying to address. Because if you deny children their education and good upbringing, then the future of Uganda is what? At stake.
All right.
That's why saying children should be at school, because these are future workers. So, and importantly, right to join trade unions, because the Constitution is very clear on that, Article 29.
Okay.
Labour Unions Act is very clear, because trade unions is legally mandated to advocate when you are together, there is solidarity and unity. So, omuno mukabi, yemuno, we work together. Because so don't fear. We are calling upon refugees and other workers to join trade unions. We have affiliates over 39 in different sectors: journalists, markets, plantations, everywhere. Domestic workers, all of them are there, and they are there to work together, to talk together, to make our Uganda a decent world to stay in.
All right. Let's hear from Juma very quickly, and then we'll come to you. Juma, do you have anything to add?
Maybe at one time we were looking at the issue of why the refugees especially in a situation of lack of job opportunities. A few things. First is that we have the international statute that binds us. But I think one other thing is to appreciate that today, as we speak, the world is a global village. The other thing is that refugees are here in Uganda, mainly not as a result of their own accord, but because of circumstantial environments around where they were. And so somehow they are forced to leave their places of abode and seek sanctuary elsewhere, and now they end up into Uganda. The same thing can even happen to Mwamula Juma anytime. So it is in that spirit that when somebody forcefully leaves his or her mother country and come to seek asylum here, we give the due regard as a human being and treat him as such, or treat her as such. Maybe the other thing is that even when those people come here, actually there are some limitations, because they are supposed to have clear registration documents. We do have gazetted spaces that are provided for them. In a few circumstances where they are left at large, maybe staying in urban centers and so on and so forth, still there are regulations. Even when somebody is accommodated, especially in formal working spaces, normally there are some permits and so on and so forth. So a Ugandan should never get scared that when we embrace our brothers and sisters who are in need as a result of circumstances in their home countries, is that we are trading off our opportunity for jobs. No. It is simply that we are embracing the element of humanity and giving dignity to every human life. Because today it is them, you never know tomorrow would be another person. But we have already highlighted that these people can be a productive force if well handled. Imagine utilizing the refugees to catch into their labor, and it is serving the economy of Uganda. Imagine giving them a boost to do so many developmental issues, and eventually the government is able to levy a tax either in income tax or in whichever forms. All that is again that we can get through them. So therefore, the perception should be a welcoming, and after all, that is the national view from the vision bearer of this country, His Excellency the President. He has opened up into what is called an open door policy. He's welcoming everybody, and so we should not look at them as a threat. We rather need to embrace, and especially embrace supporting organizations. For example, we have ILO that has taken up this mandate, and several other refugee supporting agencies. These people are financing serious projects, and part of the benefit of this, part of the aims of these projects is job creation amongst the refugees, but also focusing on the host communities. So today, if you went to Nachivale, you would realize it is another small town within those rural areas of, which district is that? Isingiro district. You see? So that should also be looked at as an opportunity that we can tap into and really have a better Uganda.
All right, let's hear from Mr. Bigiro very quickly before we hear from the listeners. A number of comments coming in from the WhatsApp line.
Okay, thank you. For me, first of all, I want to thank you, Kenneth. Just to add on my colleagues, I want to take this opportunity once again to encourage Ugandans to join labor unions. In that view, we have seen many groupings, beginning with our employers. Much as for them, they don't call themselves trade unions, but they have their unions. Federation of Uganda Employers is employers' union. When they have issues of VAT, when they have issues of all these kinds of things they want to achieve, all employers learn Federation of Uganda Employers. We have seen Uganda Manufacturers Association. It speaks for the employers and many other associations. And that's why you see all the time for them, they're a bit organized, and you see them running here and there. But for the workers, we believe we can do it ourselves. And that is why we may not achieve much. But the National Organization of Trade Union is doing whatever it takes. And it has organized many workers, both formal and informal, to ensure that we get enough bargaining power. The way the employers are doing, they are forming a lot of associations. You find the Alcohol Association, the Water Association, the what. Those associations are not for nothing. They are to fight for their rights where they believe they have been oppressed. And therefore, in the same vein, I'm calling upon all the workers in this country to ensure they embrace their own unions like the way the employers have done. In that sense, we shall find ourselves having a stronger bargaining power in whatever we want. Therefore, I want to say, Kenneth, you journalists, please join hands with us. I know some of you are already in the union, but we want bigger numbers to boost our negotiating power.
All right, we have comments coming in from the listeners. I'll begin with Charles, who is listening to us from the UK. He says, hello, Spectrum. I might not be an NRM or President Museveni supporter, but I must admit when it comes to refugees in the world and Africa as a whole, Uganda stands out as the number one among host countries. Uganda, with nearly 1.5 million, continue to be home to the largest number of refugees in Africa in 2022. Most refugees in Uganda originated from South Sudan and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Thank God for our hospitality. That's a comment coming in from Charles. Then Ruben writes in and says, we have a situation in Uganda where we don't have jobs. The government is inviting investors to come. And now you're complaining about indecent work and poor pay. How do we strike a balance? That's a comment there coming in from Ruben. Then we have a comment from Nancy who says, trade unions in Uganda always align with the government. What are they doing about promoting workers' rights as we have seen in other countries? We have a comment coming in from Richard who writes in and says, Uganda hosts so many refugees, but are the host communities where they stay benefiting at all when we have very many Ugandans, including children of the host communities, not having any form of employment? Well, those are some of the comments that have come in. Very quickly, if you can respond to them as we get closer to the end of this program. Who takes the question first?
Thank you. It's no doubt that Uganda is one of the most hospitable countries when it comes to refugees. That one is not questionable, and we want to thank the government for doing that. On the issue of aligning with the government, as Ali highlighted, trade union has a spirit of bargaining. I know sometimes we take long, but sometimes patience pays. What we are saying that we have been involved in a lot of bargaining, and there are cases and scenarios where we have brought a package, but sometimes you may not realize which packages we have brought. Maybe that is a topic of another day to outline what we have achieved in so many years we have been around. But all in all, that as National Organization of Trade Union, our role is to ensure that we advocate for the workers' rights. We influence policies, which we have done. We are always at Parliament trying to ensure that we advocate for the laws which are in favor of the workers of this country. Many other things we have done to lobby for the rights of workers in this country. But I will not lose my point, whereby I'm saying that we need more numbers for our public collective bargaining agreement. And this is very important. I still believe that many of you outside there who do not belong to the union should join us, and we form a force which is formidable enough to advocate. But by and large, the National Organization of Trade Union is still and will still continue advocating for workers' rights, as it has always been.
All right, let's hear from Businje, if you can respond to some of the comments that have come in, especially on the issue of refugees.
Thank you so much. One, in terms of benefits to the host communities, there is a deliberate policy by government that even by development partners, for instance, if they're going to establish a school, that school does not belong only to refugees. It's shared. If they are constructing a borehole, the borehole is used by both the host community members and the refugees themselves. Even in terms of the programs and interventions, you find most times when development partners and government have taken a program in these areas, first priority is given for job opportunities, is given to the host communities. That's what we're calling local content. They're given priority in terms of the jobs that are being undertaken in those areas. The other issue is that there's also a policy where district local governments with settlement camps, they are given power and mandate, one, to plan, to monitor. Most times all the budgets and programs that are being undertaken for the refugees are mainstreamed within district development plans. And that's how they plan that this area doesn't have a road. Please let's ensure that this road is catered for. So there is a deliberate policy to ensure that there is effective sharing between the refugees and the host communities. Then in terms of the jobs, Uganda unemployment crisis. Yes, it's not only in Uganda. Job crisis is everywhere. You have seen in UK election, the Labour Party overthrew Conservative Party because of one of the key areas was job opportunities. So it is something which is mind-boggling, but as Secretary General did mention, let's create jobs by our own. Let's start. As long as the government has given us opportunity, that's why we work throughout in Uganda. Night jobs are there. There's no any particular time where Kampala has closed.
All right.
People work throughout.
All right, let's hear from Juma. Juma, your closing remarks as we come to the end of this show.
Thank you so much. I think I'll make a very quick one, especially on the issue of employment crisis and why then do we bring in the element of decent work. First is that when the government lures investors to come in here, it is for purposes of improving economic welfare. And therefore, it should never be taken in isolation that it is about establishing very many factories when actually the people serving within those factories are very miserable. No, that then falls short of the essence for which the factories are put here. The factories are put here to be able to contribute to national economy through taxation and other things. So therefore, it is important that as they come to be established, also the workers who work there are decently earning from them, for them to be able to contribute meaningfully to the economic development. That is something very important. But maybe I should also use this moment to speak to my colleagues out there, the teachers, that as we speak now, government through Ministry of Education has put into Parliament a national teacher bill. They are coming about to legislate about our welfare, the need for every teacher to possess a degree, the need for every teacher to always have periodic licenses before you can step into class, and so many other things. Many of the proposals within this bill are really something that is going to directly touch the situation under which we serve.
Right.
So I want to ask the teachers out there to be very vigilant and make sure that your opinion is counted.
Right.
Reach out to Uganda Private Teachers Union for your views that we then can carry forward for a better legislative environment around our profession. I want to thank you and thank the management for the audience.
All right, we will continue, of course, to actually keep in touch with you to follow up on some of these issues that you're doing, but also provide you the voice, platform to air out your voice on behalf of the workers of Uganda as we continue pushing for decent work, but also how workers can contribute to the well-being of our country. Now, stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90. The news in English is up next with Ms. Josephine Dagano. Thereafter, we'll have the Soul Train with BB Jr. But tomorrow, same time, Spectrum will be on air. I've been your host, Kenneth Lukwaga Anderson, wishing you a good night.